I've had some version of this conversation more than once. A family reaches out, sometimes before they get a dog, sometimes after, sometimes in the middle of a crisis. That began the week they brought one home. They've done their research. They've read the articles. They have a list. Golden Retrievers, Labrador Retrievers, Cavalier King Charles Spaniels. Dogs described, reliably, across dozens of websites as gentle, patient, good with children, easy to train. They chose carefully, or they thought they did. And now they're sitting with a dog who is either completely overwhelmed by their household or who is running it in ways nobody anticipated, and they're not sure what went wrong. What went wrong, almost always, is not the dog. And it's not the family. It's the question they were trying to answer. This is Under the Same Roof. I'm Jennifer Tan, certified family dog mediator and professional dog trainer, and this is episode 6. The first 5 episodes of this series have lived mostly inside my household. My son, my dogs. The specific texture of what it's like to share a small condo in Vancouver with multiple nervous systems. None of them typical. All of them doing their best. This episode is different. I want to step back from my story and talk directly to families who are still in the decision, who are standing at the beginning of this and trying to figure out how to get it right. Because which breed is good with kids is not a useful question when your child is neurodivergent. It's not that the answer is wrong. It's that it's answering something different from what you actually need to know. Here's what the breed lists are measuring more or less. Tolerance of typical child behavior, noise at a predictable volume, movement that follows recognizable patterns, touch that is sometimes clumsy but not sustained or intense, a child who can, most of the time, read a dog's signals and respond to them. That's a reasonable thing to measure for a lot of families. It's just not what neurodivergent households look like. In a neurodivergent household, the noise might not follow predictable patterns. It might be absent for hours and then suddenly very loud, with no wind-up. The movement might be erratic in ways that a dog's nervous system reads, as unpredictable rather than simply energetic. The touch might be heavier than the child intends, or more prolonged, or concentrated in ways the dog doesn't expect, and the child may not be able to read the dog's stress signals reliably. Not because they don't care, but because that kind of real-time social reading is genuinely hard for them. None of this is a problem with the child, but it does mean that the dog in that household is navigating a sensory environment that is categorically different from the one the breed list was designed around. A dog who is genuinely wonderful in a typical family home might be genuinely struggling in yours. Not because they're the wrong dog, but because nobody asked the right questions before they arrived. What I'd rather talk about than breeds is a framework, a set of questions you can apply to any dog, any background, any mix, that will tell you far more about fit than a temperament category ever will. These questions come from my work as a family dog mediator, specifically from the L.E.G.S model: learning, environment, genetics, and self. Not as a checklist, but as a way of thinking about the whole picture of a dog before they become part of your whole picture. I want to walk you through 5 of them. What does this dog do when something unpredictable happens? This is the single most important question for a neurodivergent household, and it almost never appears on adoption profiles or breeder questionnaires. Unpredictability is not just tolerated differently by different dogs. It's processed differently at a neurological level. Some dogs have a fast startle and a fast recovery. They flinch, they shake it off, they move on. Others have a slower build. They don't react dramatically in the moment, but the experience goes into the bucket, and the bucket fills over time. Others have a high startle and a slow recovery. which means that an unexpected loud sound in the afternoon is still affecting their threshold in the evening when your child is having a hard time. In a household where unpredictability is a feature rather than an exception, you want a dog whose recovery is fast, not a dog who doesn't react at all. That dog may simply be shutting down, which is its own welfare concern, but a dog who reacts and then genuinely returns to baseline quickly. That dog can live in a neurodivergent household without accumulating chronic stress in the way that a slow recovery dog will. How do you find this out? You watch. You ask the foster family or the shelter staff. Not is this dog good with kids, but how does this dog respond when something surprising happens, and how long does it take him to settle afterward? Ask what their worst day looked like, not their best. What is this dog's relationship with physical contact? Some dogs are what I'd call contact-seeking. They want to be touched. They move toward hands. They're comfortable with sustained physical closeness. Others tolerate contact, but don't actively seek it. Others find certain kinds of touch prolonged, heavy, unexpected, genuinely aversive, even if they don't show it in obvious ways. In a household with a child who may not modulate touch easily, or who uses physical contact with the dog for their own sensory regulation, this question matters enormously. A dog who finds heavy or prolonged touch aversive is not going to become comfortable with it over time through exposure. They're going to become more stressed, more avoidant, or in the worst case, more reactive, as their attempts to communicate discomfort are repeatedly missed. Ray, my Korean village dog, is an example of what contact-seeking looks like at its clearest. He seeks out pets. He positions himself for touch and leans into it. If you stop, he boops you with his nose, a very deliberate, very legible request to please continue. He has never once in his life suggested that physical contact was unwelcome. For a household where a child might reach for the dog often or use that contact for their own regulation, a dog like Ray is a meaningful fit. The touching is mutual. The communication is clear. Nobody is tolerating anything. You're not looking for a dog who tolerates anything. You're looking for a dog who genuinely enjoys physical contact across different kinds of contact, and who has a clear and legible way of saying when they've had enough, a way that you, as the adult in the house, can learn to read and act on. What is this dog's relationship with noise? Not just loud noise in general, the specific profile of noise that your household produces. Sudden volume spikes, a voice that has no middle register, sounds that start without warning, sounds that repeat. Dogs who are noise sensitive are often described as anxious or reactive, and that description is accurate, but it doesn't always capture the mechanism. A noise-sensitive dog in a consistently unpredictable sound environment is a dog whose stress bucket is never fully emptying, because the thing that fills it is always present. That chronic low-grade stress changes behavior over time in ways that are hard to trace back to the source. This doesn't mean noise-sensitive dogs and neurodivergent households can never work. It means you go in with your eyes open, with safe spaces built in, with decompression structured deliberately rather than hoped for. But a dog with a high noise tolerance, who habituates quickly to sounds that repeat, is a meaningful advantage in your specific household. That's worth asking about explicitly. What does this dog do with his energy when he can't discharge it the way he's used to? Every dog has a genetic drive profile, a set of behaviors he's built to perform that feels satisfying and necessary in a way that nothing else quite substitutes for. In working and sporting breeds especially, those drives are strong and they don't disappear, just because the dog is now living in a flat rather than on a farm. A dog with a high chase drive, living in a household where outdoor exercise is sometimes inconsistent because your child had a hard morning and leaving the house wasn't possible, needs somewhere to put that drive. If it doesn't have an outlet, it finds one. The couch. The other dog. The running teenager. This is not misbehavior. It's a nervous system looking for the thing it was built to do. In a neurodivergent household, where routines are sometimes disrupted by your child's needs, think carefully about what a dog's unmet drive looks like in practice, and whether you have the capacity to meet it. Not on the good days, on the hard ones. That's the honest question. Not, can we exercise a high-energy dog, but can we exercise a high-energy dog on the days when everything else is also hard? What is this dog's relationship with routine, and what happens when it breaks? This one doesn't appear on any list I've ever seen, and it should. There is a quiet irony in neurodivergent households and dogs. Both autistic children, and many dogs, function better with predictable routines. In that sense, they can be genuinely well matched. But the routines can't always be maintained. That's the reality of neurodivergent family life. And what matters is how the dog handles the rupture. Some dogs weather schedule changes without much visible effect. Others carry them. A dog who becomes unsettled when the morning walk is late, or when the household rhythm shifts for a week because of school holidays or a difficult patch, is a dog who is adding to his own bucket in a household that may already be generating plenty to add to it. Ask the foster family or the rescue staff. What happens when his routine gets disrupted? Does he settle back quickly, or does it take a day or two to level out? That information is more useful than almost anything else they can tell you. None of these questions have a single right answer, and none of them alone determines fit. A dog with noise sensitivity can thrive in a neurodivergent household with the right structure in place. A high-drive dog can be a wonderful match for a teenager who channels energy the same way. Individual dogs defy frameworks, always. But these are the right questions. They're the ones that describe your household honestly, not an idealized version of it. Not the household you'll have on a calm day in spring, the one you're actually living in on the hard days, because that's the household the dog is joining. I've watched families navigate this well, the ones where the dog becomes genuinely part of the fabric of things, rather than a source of additional stress. They share one thing in common. They went in knowing what they were asking of the dog, not just what they were hoping the dog would give them. That's not a lower bar. That's a more honest one. And honest is the only place a good match actually starts. A note before I close, because I think it's important. If you're listening to this and you already have a dog, and you're hearing these questions and realizing the match isn't what you thought it was, I want you to know that this information is still useful. Understanding what your dog is actually navigating in your household is the beginning of being able to help him. You can build structure around noise sensitivity after the fact. You can create decompression space after the fact. You can learn to read the signals you've been missing. The family who chose carefully and still landed in a hard situation is not a failure. The dog who is struggling in a household that didn't know what it was asking of him is not a lost cause. What's needed, in almost every case I've seen, is the same thing. Clearer understanding of who the dog actually is and what your household actually costs him, and then building from there. That's what this work is. That's what family dog mediation is, at its core. Not fixing the dog, not managing the child, understanding the whole household as a system, and finding where the pressure can be relieved. Next episode, I want to talk about something I touched on in episode 5 and want to come back to: what the bond between your child and your dog can look like when it finally arrives on its own terms. Not the bond you imagined when you brought the dog home, the one that actually grew. Because in my experience, it's almost always stranger and quieter and more specific than anything you could have planned for, and it's worth talking about. I'm Jennifer Tan. This is Under the Same Roof, understanding before strategies. Always